373.
The final hour of the Pac-12 This Morning on SiriusXM Channel 373. Coming up bottom of the hour, a focus on Washington football. I'm with you, but joining us right now, Jim McGill from, he's a Bear Insider, California for the Bear Insider, and we will take a closer look at this Justin Wilcox squad where I feel like expectations are maybe even a little higher than last year. I don't know last year I think he had said before the season the goal is to win a bowl game. Fell just short of that a season ago. But Jim, appreciate you giving us a couple minutes here and giving us a preview of the upcoming season. So take me through it. I think the obvious place to start is on offense because of how strong the defense has been. Growth of the quarterback spot. Explain to me just how much better they can be at that position this season.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. This season, a lot hinges on the offense and everything hinges on the quarterback. I would have said last year if you were going to come into the 2019 season with Chase Garbers as the quarterback, Cal would probably be a little bit in trouble because he really struggled towards the end of last season. But he was like a different quarterback in the spring, and so far this fall, I guess it's pretty not unusual for a quarterback to make a leap from their freshman to sophomore years, but especially when a guy like Garbers was thrown into the starting situation like he was last year. He rarely got number one snaps in camp with Bowers coming back as the presumed starter, but Bowers got injured and kind of fell apart, and Garbers just really wasn't prepared against certain defenses that weren't too tough. He was okay, but against tougher defenses, he just wasn't ready to read what he was seeing. So he actually looks like he's got a good chance at starting again, even though UCLA transfer Devon Monster came over, and he was pretty capable as a true freshman for UCLA. But he's been challenging him so far this fall camp. And I think pushing Garbers will only be good for both of them because if Garber stumbles, it looks like Monster might be ready to step in too.
What would it mean though for Garbers to stumble? I think that's just the biggest question mark with this football team and what Justin Wilcox has been able to do not only defensively but put this team in a position where they could get over the top. And it's about the quarterback position and offensively. What are they going to do? Outside of the quarterback position, in particular the skill position players, replacing Laird at running back and at the wide receiver position to help that quarterback along.
You know, one of the things that was a problem for Garbers last year is that he really didn't have a lot of support around him. The offensive line had some injury problems, especially late in the year when they got into the tougher part of their schedule, and they were really injured quite a bit at the receiver position. Their top three guys, Duncan and Wharton and Noah, were injured significantly during the season, and didn't really give him a lot of good options. And Laird had a tremendous junior season in 2017, but he got his knee scoped right before the 2018 season, and he was probably 75% all season, and there really wasn't good backup options. True freshman Chris Brown was the main backup, and he was coming off a foot injury his senior year in high school. If you look at things in spring and in camp so far this fall, he's really got a lot more weapons. If you start at the running back position, Brown looks like a different player too. He looks like a really good player. He's got explosion. He's really big and strong. And he's got guys behind him that can really change the pace when they give him a bit of a rest. You've got a couple of junior college transfers in Marshawn Dancy and Marcel Dancy and Deshaun Collins, who are compact and really quick and explosive, and they're good targets out of the backfield for Garbers too. They can pick up good yards, and at the receiving core, you've got 7 guys that you've got some that are somewhat untested, but seem to be good targets for him so far. Nico Remigio is probably the main target that he has worked with quite a bit in the offseason, and he's been money so far in camp. Jordan Duncan's back healthy. Jeremiah Hawkins is a quick junior. Had a little bit of trouble holding onto the ball, but so far in camp he's been pretty good. You've got Michigan transfer Kekoa Crawford, who is a quick, strong receiver, 6'1", 190. You've got a JC transfer coming in Trayvon Clark, who's big and long at 6'4", 180, who's quick and can stretch the field. And you've got a tight end core that was not a weapon at all last year that is looking to be a weapon this year in McAllen Castles and Gavin Reinwald, who can really catch the ball. So he's got a lot more weapons out there. The offensive line is a little bit deeper. They're pretty experienced. Everybody's had good playing time that's going to be starting this year. I've got some young guys that are vying to get into the rotation. So he's in a position where he can succeed if he plays within himself. The other factor, too, is that he really couldn't throw the ball downfield too much last year. A lot of his completions were short. In the spring, he was hitting the intermediate balls and occasional long balls a lot more consistently, and you've got to be able to stretch the defense. That's what he seems to be able to do so far this camp.
Jim, what you're describing to me is guys that have some upside, and they obviously need that, but it almost feels like they're hoping that a few things hit as opposed to having true answers on that offensive side. Am I reading what you're saying correctly, or are there enough known commodities where we feel like they are locks to be able to produce at a high level?
I say your read is correct at the receiver position. There's a lot more hopes than proven ability right now. Everybody that's seen the receiving core so far has liked what they've seen in spring and in fall, but you're right in that there is some hope. You have a guy like Crawford that didn't do a ton at Michigan, even though he was a highly touted recruit. Is he going to be able to step up and get the most out of his potential? You got a guy like Trayvon Clark, who was very productive at the JC level, but sometimes JCs take a year to transition. Is he going to be able to pick it up quicker? Is Duncan going to be able to stay healthy? He was really good last year before he got hurt, but he has had some injury bugs, although hurting your hand and the types of things that he had happen to him don't seem to be things that are going to necessarily recur automatically. Hawkins, can he hold on to the ball? So, you've got some questions like that. Mekhi Polk is a early entry freshman receiver who's looked surprisingly early at the receiver position. Is he going to be able to carry that into actual game production? So yeah, you've got some question marks there. I think with the offensive line, they're a bit more proven if they can stay relatively healthy. I don't think that's really a question mark. And at running back, you've got guys that admittedly with the JC guys haven't been here to do it, but I think at the running back position, when you've got a little bit more age and experience and strength, it's a little bit less of a question mark than you have at receiver. That's the part I think that's the biggest question.
This football team opens with a big game in week 2 at Washington, a team they upset a year ago at home. I heard Mike say something a little while back about how I don't know if Cal's ready to be the North champion yet, but they're going to decide who wins the North. And I thought that was really apropos. Week 2 at Washington, how important is that football game in this program to get off to a good start? Because the last 2 years, they've won the first 3 games out the gate and then kind of stumbled down the line. Is it important for them to get off to a good start with Washington in particular in week 2?
Yeah, that would be huge. It could be a make or break game for Cal too. I mean, you can't go into that game expecting a winning in Seattle against the Pac-12 champ really early when you're in sort of a offensive transition is a tall order. But I would say that catching Washington early is to Cal's benefit. They've got a changeover in quarterback and some other key positions, and if you can catch them early before the Huskies have gelled, maybe you have a chance to pull off the upset. Defense travels well. Offense you can't necessarily rely on to get you a win on the road, but a strong defense will keep you in any game. And if they can do enough on offense, maybe they could pull off the upset. But you want to at least see a competitive game to give yourself confidence going into the rest of the season.
I mentioned the defense being kind of a juggernaut. Last year, those 21 picks, that was second in the country. Can this team be better this year on that side of the ball?
Well, I think they can be because last year they accomplished what they did without much of a pass rush, and they've got some pretty dynamic pass rushers between the defensive ends and outside linebacker position that if you get pressure on the quarterback, that can make a difference too, and even lead to more interceptions. An interesting element added to the mix was JC transfer Coin Dang, who is 6'6", and he's got really long arms, and he gets his arms into the passing lanes. And so far during fall camp, he's been making the quarterbacks make adjustments that put more air on the ball, and the DBs love it because they have a better chance to get under it and get those picks that they've been looking for.
This football team defensively has been the reason for their success. In a conference where it's about offense, how important is it for them to be able to score with the other football teams and not necessarily be as dominant on defense, but rather keep them in football games and allow an offense to kind of be the story? Are they capable of being a defensive-laden football team and competing in the North moving forward?
Cal fans that follow the program closely always just say, give me at least an average Pac-12 offense, and with this defense, they're going to accomplish a lot. I think they are certainly capable of being in the middle of the pack on the offensive side of the ball, and that would be a big step up because last season they were right around the bottom. They only scored, I believe, 21 points a game, and some of those 21 were defensive points, like Evan Weaver's game-winning pick 6 against the Huskies last year. So the offense really needs to score at least the high 20s or low 30s to be a threat to Washington's reign as Pac-12 champ. I think they're capable of it, but like Mike said, there are questions that have to be answered. You can't assume that the best case scenario is going to happen with each position. But with the way that Garbers has stepped up and the way that Monster has seemingly learned the offense and is competing well so far this fall camp, I think there's a reasonable chance of that happening.
Jim, before I let you get going, I know you get the luxury of being around this football team pretty regularly, and you get to talk to a lot of players and the coaching staff. Is there one guy that maybe we don't know about, or maybe there's a player that is well known for what he does on the football field that has an interesting story, or you've had a memorable moment or interaction with that really resonates for you and maybe tells kind of a big picture story about this football team?
There's a lot of interesting guys on this team. Justin Wilcox always recruits to character. So these guys, a lot of them have interesting backstories, and they're really hard-working guys. To single out anybody individually off the top of my head, I don't know. I mean, Luke Beckett, the defensive end, he has an interesting story. His mom was a world champion skater, an Olympic skater, Debbie Thomas from Stanford, and his dad was a high school offensive lineman at Arkansas, so he comes from a real athletic family, and he's had an interesting journey with his mom's mental health situation and family relations, and just the tradition of the family going to Arkansas. I think he had like 3 or 4 relatives that went there, but he made his own way out to Cal, and he's a super intelligent, great leader, hardworking guy. He's always super interesting to talk to. There's just a lot of great guys on this team that have a lot of interesting backstories. I'm sure thinking about it a little bit more, I could tell you some more, but they're a real high character, hardworking team that are a real pleasure to cover.
No, you're right, and it's a great answer. It's a great story. The one interesting thing, a lot of times people always point to Stanford as those guys being different, and they are. And I think Cal doesn't get, enough due credit for the maturity that they have on that roster. I mean, I've always had some really good interactions with the players in Berkeley, and I feel like they don't get enough credit. So always interesting to hear someone else's take on that, knowing that you're around this football team as regularly as you are. But Jim, really appreciate the insight, man. Hopefully we'll see you in person on campus pretty soon, but if not, we'll hopefully get you back on the show soon.
Sounds good. Appreciate it, guys.